Part 23. 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 221. Something exploded in his head. Lunan felt that his mind was completely blank at the moment. The fetus was not in the correct position, which might not guarantee the safety of mother and child. No, I cannot. His little daughter-in-law is so powerful, how could she not guarantee the safety of mother and child? His Jinner was born peacefully in his previous life, so how could there be danger in this life? Seeing that Lunan didn't respond, the nurse anxiously urged, family members, hurry up and sign. Wait, you wait first. At this time, Lunan didn't believe anyone. The only person he believed in was Ning 11. He lowered his head and looked at Ning 11, whose breathing was getting slower and slower. His heart almost ached to death. He leaned down and kissed her on the lips. Daughter-in-law, wife, wake up, wake up. Honey, wake up. Okay, Jinbeo is in danger, our Jinbeo is in danger. The doctors and nurses in the room saw that Lunan was still calling Ning 11 at this time, with anxious expressions and speechless faces. Obviously he looks like a very mature man, but he is so indecisive that he doesn't even dare to sign at the critical moment. The doctor also looked extremely embarrassed. What's the use of asking the mother at this time? You have to believe us. You have to know that the longer you stay here, the greater the danger to the mother and the child. Shut up! Lunan glared at the doctor angrily with red eyes, then lowered his head, held Ning 11's face, and kissed her lips. Honey, wake up, our Jinbeo is in danger. Wife, only you can save Jinbeo baby, wake up quickly, wake up, okay. Ah, Ning 11 screamed and opened her eyes suddenly. Wife, they said Jinbeo's fetus was in an abnormal position and came out feet first, so he needed surgery, but surgery may not guarantee the safety of mother and child. Wife, what should we do now, what should we do? Hearing Lunan's words, Ning 11's body twitched hard, and she moved her body to get up, but she had no strength at all. She struggled to utter a few words. Correct the fetal position. Correction of the fetal position. How to correct this? One of the child's feet is already at the cervix. The doctor was almost furious with the couple, and shouted angrily, Ning 11, I can see that, you, a man, are doing. If you don't care, I will explain the situation clearly to you. Your current situation is very dangerous. If you are not careful, both mother and daughter will die. You must leave and sign the consent form for the operation and the critical illness notification form. No surgery is needed. Ning 11 closed her eyes and looked hard at the man who was sweating profusely and nervous with bulging veins on his head. Did you bring the medical kit? Bring it. When she was leaving, Ning 11 shouted to bring the medical kit, and Lu Zhengai specially brought it. There is a blue and white porcelain vase at the bottom of the medicine cabinet. There is a pill in it. Give it to me. Okay, I'll get it. Lunan stood up and was about to walk out. Family members, I told you that you can't delay it any longer now, you must go away. Lunan yelled angrily, pushed the doctor away, rushed out of the delivery room, found the pill in the medicine box, and quickly brought it in for Ning 11. My wife got it. Ning 11 opened her mouth, and Lunan quickly fed the pill to Ning 11's mouth. What are you giving the mother to eat? How can you mess around at this time? The doctor wanted to stop him, but was stopped by Lunan's murderous look. After taking the pill, Ning 11 raised her hand softly. Lunan quickly caught Ning 11's hand and followed her strength and placed her hand on her bulging belly. Brother Nan, help me. Okay. Lunan put his hands on Ning 11's hands tacitly. Use the force in the direction of my hand. Ning 11 couldn't exert much strength on her own, so she had to ask Lunan to help her. The two of them put their hands on their stomachs and exerted force together, changing positions and exerting force again and again. The doctors and nurses tried to stop and scold them several times, but to no avail. If they encountered other patients messing around like this, the doctor could throw the uncooperative family member out, but Lunan was too scary. When he stared at them, his eyes were scarlet red. His eyelids were as scary as a cheetah staring at food, making a group of people afraid to get even close to him. Ning 11 groaned, okay, that's it? All right. What's better? The doctors and nurses looked confused. Lunan immediately shouted angrily, look at my daughter. The sky has turned around. How come? Ning 11 yelled, grabbed Lunan's arm, gritted her teeth and started to exert force. The pill had already taken effect at this time and allowed her to regain some strength. As long as she persisted, Jinbei would soon it will come out. Ning 11 had already started to exert force, but the doctor was still stunned. Lunan yelled at the doctor anxiously, what are you doing standing still? Help my wife deliver the baby. The doctor came to his senses after being yelled at by Lunan and hurriedly said, hurry, Ning 11, come on. The child's head is out, come on, keep on going. Come out, come out. The doctor picked up the child, who had been in the belly for too long. His whole body had turned purple and he was only breathing weakly. This made the doctor anxious. He quickly put the child aside and performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation. After some first aid, the child finally cried out. Hearing the child crying, Ning 11 showed a smile on her face, relaxed instantly, and fell into a deep sleep. Lunan looked at the doctor anxiously, daughter-in-law, wife, doctor, my wife has fainted. The nurse glanced at Lunan and snorted coldly, don't you need a doctor? The doctor glanced at the nurse and examined Ning 11. Family members, don't be nervous. The mother was tired and fell asleep. So, family members, please wipe off the sweat first. The doctor handed Lunan some gauze. Lunan was as if he had been fished out of the water at this moment, his whole body was wet, and he was nervous as if he was the one giving birth to the child. Lunan took the gauze and wiped Ning 11's sweat first before wiping himself casually. Family members, the children have been wrapped, a pair of twins. Two nurses reported the two children in front of Lunan. How about taking the baby out first, the doctor suggested. The family member was focused on the mother and was probably not in the mood to look after the baby. Lunan's thoughts were indeed on Ning 11 at the moment, but Ning 11 had gone through a lot of hardships to give birth to the two children. How could he not see the children? He stood up, turned around and looked at the children in the nurse's hands. He reached out and hugged one of the children. The nurse said from the side, this is the second child, a daughter. Jinbao, you've made your mother miserable. Lunan lowered his head and kissed his daughter's tender cheek. Lunan handed his daughter to the nurse, then picked up his son. He also lowered his head and kissed his son's cheek. His head was gently pressed against his son, and a tear slipped quietly. Nian Bao, my father owed you so much in the previous life. In this life, my father will double what he owed you and your sister in the previous life. Lunan sent his son to the nurse. The doctor said from the side, the child needs to be put into an incubator and observed for 24 hours. Okay, please help me take the baby out first. When can my wife return to the ward? 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 222. Wait a moment, you can go out after the treatment is completed, he replied, treated Ning 11's laceration wound, made sure that Ning 11 had no problem, and asked the nurse to push Ning 11 out of the delivery room and into the ward. Lunan used a dry towel to help Ning 11 dry her body, and brought her the pure cotton pajamas prepared by Ning 11 to put on, then wiped her face and helped her tidy up her messy hair. Xiaonan, put the hat on 11er and put the socks on Ning Xiao. He took out the hat and socks prepared in advance and handed them to Lunan. She stood aside and watched Lunan busy. Seeing her daughter's haggard appearance, she felt very distressed and wanted to take care of him personally, but her son-in-law didn't give her a chance to intervene. Helping Ning 11 pack up, Lunan's legs suddenly went weak and he knelt down on the floor. Ah! Zionan, what's wrong with you? Ning Ziohe was startled and hurried to help Lunan, but she couldn't help her up. Lunan didn't answer. His whole body was shaking uncontrollably. He was frightened. Since he has grown so big, he has never been so scared even when his legs were crippled. Doctor, Lunan's appearance frightened Ning Ziohe, and she ran outside in surprise. Mom, I'm fine, I'm just scared, Lunan grabbed Ning Ziohe, lowered his head and burst into tears. I almost lost Xiao 11 and Jin Bao just now. Ning Ziohe trembled. She only knew that Lunan hurriedly ran out to get a medicine and hurriedly went in. She had no idea what Ning 11 had just experienced. When she saw Lunan like this, her eyes were filled with tears. Also red. She stretched out her hand to protect Lunan's head and patted him gently. Xiao Nan, okay, don't cry. R11ER has a hard life and has survived so much suffering. She will never be let down by such a trivial matter defeat. Lunan shook his head in disapproval. It's not a trivial matter. Giving birth to a child is taking half of a woman's life. Tears slid down Ning Ziohe's cheeks. She was not feeling uncomfortable but crying with joy. It was so good that her daughter had met a good man who knew how to love her and care for her. After a while, Lunan finally recovered. Ning Ziohe helped him sit down on another hospital bed and patted his shoulder. It's okay, it's okay. Isn't this all over? Mom, where are my dad and Xiao Bei? When he accompanied Ning 11 out of the delivery room, he didn't see Lu Zhengai and Lu Bei. After your father and the nurse took the child into the observation room, he took Xiao Bei for injury assessment. Police has come here several times. Before, Lu Bei refused to go because he was worried about his sister-in-law. As soon as Ning Ziohe finished speaking, the nurse came. Family members, we have a 24-hour small shop downstairs. You go down and buy a milk bottle and a bag of milk powder to send to the observation room. The child will need food in a while. Mom, please stay with Xiao 11 here while I go buy it. Don't just sit there and squint on the bed next to you. Lunan and Ning Ziohe said something to each other and left the ward. After selling things at the small shop, giving money and preparing to leave, Lunan saw the public phone on the table, thought about it, picked it up and dialed a number. The phone in the living room was noisy and Sueagyo was upset for a while. He got up, picked up a piece of clothing and went to the living room to answer the phone. Hello. Chief. Hearing Lunan's voice, Sueagyo glanced at his watch. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Didn't this guy go home? What should we do for him at this point? Thinking that he was woken up in the middle of the night, and it was not because of something in the army, Sueagyo's tone was extremely bad. You'd better be fine. If nothing happened, you would be dead. Chief, I'm a father. Sueagyo was exhausted. Nonsense, aren't you just going back to take maternity leave? Xiao 11 gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, an hour ago. Sueagyo was stunned, and it took him a while to realize what Lunan said. Am I a grandpa? Yes. Sueagyo was completely sleepless and asked with a happy face, is 11ER okay? It's very bad. When the second baby was born, the fetal position was not correct, which almost killed Xiao 11 half of his life. Fortunately, he is fine now. Tears fell uncontrollably again, and Lunan thought about it. The sinister scene between Ning 11 and Jin Bao made her heart ache. How could this happen? How did you take care of her? How could anything happen to her? Lunan. Sueagyo was so angry that his whole body trembled and he yelled angrily, I am just such a precious daughter. If anything happens to her, I will definitely kill you. At this time, he might feel better after being scolded or even beaten. That was the treasure he vowed to hold in his hands. How could he feel better because he almost died in the delivery room? After losing his temper, Sueagyo gradually calmed down. He saw how much Lunan cared about his precious daughter, and he also knew that he could not anger Lunan because of this matter. Sueagyo took a deep breath and softened his tone. She needs the most companionship at this time. Go back and take good care of her. Yes, sir, don't worry too much, Xiao 11 is fine now. Do you think I can rest assured? Sueagyo asked back, and hung up the phone without giving Lunan a chance to speak. He quickly called his security guard and asked the security guard to drive over and take him to the train station. Hung up the phone, Sueagyo thought for a while and gave his old man a call. No one answered the phone. Sueagyo called a second time. When he was about to hang up, the other party picked up the phone and said in a very bad tone, "Who is that?" "Dad, I." Before Sueagyo could speak, he was scolded by Mr. Su on the other end of the phone. "What time is it now, bastard? You think your old man's heart is too good? Do you want to make me angry about his heart disease?" Sueagyo put the phone away from him and waited until he finished cursing before putting the phone to his ear again. Mr. Su's angry voice came from the other side of the phone again. "If you have something to say, I have nothing to say. If you have nothing to say, I will hang up." "Dad, I have something to tell you." Fearing that Mr. Su would hang up the phone, Sueagyo hurriedly said, 11ER has given birth to twins, a boy and a girl. I just want to tell you that I want to take the train overnight. Have a look. The other side of the phone reacted for a while before Mr. Su's voice came. "What kind of train are you taking?" "Take a plane there. Waegyo, take your camera with you and take 2 pictures when you come back. It's best to take 2 pictures of 11ER and her mother open. Why are you causing trouble by following me? You are not allowed to go." Mr. Su immediately scolded him. "If you go and our daughter-in-law runs away again, she will take her granddaughter with her. Where will you find someone?" Sueagyo had already told Mr. Su about the existence of Ning 11 and Ning Xiaohe, and also told Mr. Su about his and Lunan's speculations. When he heard that he had a granddaughter, Mr. Su was so happy that he wanted to let him go immediately. The son brought his granddaughter home. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 223. After learning about Ning Xiaohe's situation, he immediately calmed down and warned Sueagyo not to mess around. He must wait until people arrived in the imperial capital to see the mother and daughter. As long as they arrived in the imperial capital, it would be Mr. Su's own territory. 20 years ago, forget it if he didn't know. Now, as long as he makes arrangements for the mother and daughter to arrive in the imperial capital, as long as he doesn't nod, they will never leave the imperial capital. Sueagyo hurriedly said, "Dad, I just went over to see the child. When the time comes, I will ask Xiaonan to send Xiuhe away and I will never meet her. You have to think clearly. If you lose your wife again, you will be a bachelor for the rest of your life. I will not care about you then. I will personally go and bring back my granddaughter and precious great-grandson. Dad, I know he must go to Jiang City. His 11ER has suffered a serious crime. If he doesn't go there, he won't be able to feel at ease. However, he can't let the old man know about this, for fear that the old man will be anxious. Let's do it. Just bring your camera and take a plane there. Don't you know what your body is like, you just know how to deal with it." After hanging up the phone, Sueagyo changed his clothes, packed 2 more big red envelopes, took a camera that was rarely used once in hundreds of years, walked to the door and opened it. A dark mass outside the door fell onto his lap as he opened the door. Even though Sueagyo had the best mental quality, he was still dazed for a few seconds. After the daze passed, he took a few steps back vigilantly, put a safe distance away from the thing, and yelled, "Who?" The black shadow on the ground got up in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Su, Chief, I am Lunan's former fiancée Ning Hong. We have met. I have been to your house twice. Ning Hong pulled her hair twice and her eyes were red. She didn't care about the messy clothes. She knew very well that the more embarrassed she looked at this time, the more people would feel pity for her. She had already used this trick of pretending to be pitiful. Didn't the guards in the military compound also squat at the door for 7 days and 7 nights because of her pretending to be pitiful, before they turned a blind eye and let her in? Ning Hong's current appearance is not pitiful. Su Weiguo cannot see her. There is no light outside the door, and the moonlight tonight is not very strong. Of course, even if she sees her, Su Weiguo will not give her a good look. He has not forgotten the receipt he received a few months ago. That letter, not to mention that this woman almost killed his wife and baby daughter. Su Weiguo asked with a cold face, "What are you doing here? Who allowed you to come in?" Ning Hong was stunned. In her memory, she always looked approachable every time she saw her. Why did she feel like a different person today? Just at this time, guard Xiao Zhang also arrived in his car. When he saw a woman standing at the door, Xiao Zhang immediately became vigilant. He took out a gun from his body and pointed it at Ning Hong. "Don't move, raise your hands." Using the bright light from the car, Ning Hong saw the gun in Xiao Zhang's hand and screamed. She subconsciously hugged her head and squatted on the ground, her body shaking uncontrollably. That was a gun. If it hurt her, she would be dead. Su Weiguo didn't want to talk to Ning Hong at all, and said coldly, "Catch the person, throw him out, and find someone to find out who let him in." Yes, the guard immediately walked towards Ning Hong after receiving the order. "Chief Su, I have something to tell you." Ning Hong couldn't care less about her fear now and immediately jumped up and ran towards Su Weiguo. "You are outrageous!" Su Weiguo shouted angrily, raised his hand, grabbed Ning Hong's arm, and pushed her directly to the ground. Xiao Zhang put away his gun and rushed over, grabbed the person and dragged him out. "Chief Su, I know the whereabouts of that woman. The woman in the photo at your home, I know her, she is me." "Xiao Zhang, don't let her disturb the neighbors." Su Weiguo knew what Ning Hong was going to say. She was her mother. How could he allow her to say this, so he interrupted Ning Hong with a scold. Xiao Zhang slashed at her with a knife, and Ning Hong fainted. It was finally quiet. Xiao Zhang threw the person into the car and sent him away. About 20 minutes later, Xiao Zhang returned to Su's house. He jumped out of the car and walked to Su Weiguo. Just as he was about to speak, Su Weiguo had already closed the door and quickly got into the car. "Send me there, airport, hurry up." Okay. Xiao Zhang hurriedly ran back to the car, started the car, and drove away. "Chief, the person has been handed over to the security department. The security department is investigating who let her in. By the way, they took it from her." Found a stack of letters. Xiao Zhang handed the letter to Su Weiguo. Su Weiguo took the envelope and knew what it was just by looking at it. This is a letter he wrote to Ning Xiaohe. When she was studying, he would write to her when he missed her and couldn't see her when he was busy. This is Ning Hong's bargaining chip. She wanted to use these letters to make him believe that she was his and Ning Xiaohe's daughter. Although Ning Hong looked nothing like him, she was somewhat similar to Ning Xiaohe. Coupled with these letters written by him himself, it was impossible for him not to believe her. Su Weiguo rubbed his eyebrows. Fortunately, Lunan reminded him in advance. Fortunately, he saw his precious daughter first. Fortunately, Ning Xiaohe had been found, otherwise he would really become the Su family's. The sinner took his precious daughter's enemy home as his own daughter. Su Weiguo thought that after this incident, Ning Hong would never be put into the compound again, and he would not be ignored by Ning Hong again in the future. Little did he know that after he got on the plane, the matter was brought to the attention of the old man. Just say that Ning Hong was knocked unconscious by Xiao Zhang. Ning Hong was so dizzy that she woke up slowly around 9 o'clock the next morning. As soon as she woke up, she was greeted by a serious interrogation. Ning Hong once again showed her poor nature and told the interrogating guards in tears that she was here to find her relatives and that Su Weiguo was her biological father. Although the letters on her body were taken away, everyone knew about the letters that were taken away. I saw it. Anyone familiar with Su Weiguo's handwriting knew that it was definitely Su Weiguo's calligraphy. Seeing that the interrogating brother had already believed it, Ning Hong opened her sleeves and revealed a jade bracelet, saying that Mrs. Su had given it to her mother herself. This jade bracelet was deceived by Ning Hong from Ning Xiaohe. Ning Hong discovered the jade bracelet on Ning Xiaohe's wrist when she was ill. She said many times that the jade bracelet was very beautiful and she liked it very much. After Ning Hong's hard work, Ning Xiaohe gave the jade bracelet to Ning Hong. Under Ning Hong's various deceptions and coaxing, Ning Xiaohe foolishly told Ning Hong that her grandmother had personally brought the jade bracelet to her. When the interrogating guard saw what Ning Hong said about having a nose and eyes, and the letters, he was also afraid that the person in front of him was really Su Weiguo's daughter, and then he would be unable to eat and walk around, so he went to Su Weiguo to think about it. Tell Su Weiguo about this. Su Weiguo was not at home, so the guard contacted Xiao Zhang several times. Xiao Zhang was anxious when the guard explained the situation. If this was really the chief's daughter, they would have to report it, but now that the chief has left on a plane, they can't contact him. After much thought, Xiao Zhang decided to take Ning Hong to the old man. Didn't he say that the jade bracelet was a gift from the old lady? The old lady will know if it is true when she sees it then. 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 224. Xiao Zhang and the people from the security department agreed to go find the old man together. The two groups gathered at the entrance of another military compound. This place was even more difficult to enter than where Su Weiguo lived. All the people living here were Chinese senior figures. If Xiao Zhang hadn't led the way, the people from the security department wouldn't have been able to get in. When the group arrived, Mrs. Su was sitting in the yard choosing vegetables, and Mr. Su was tinkering with the flowers and plants in the yard. The two old men are already in their 60s and look very tough, especially the old man. If you stand over there, as long as you don't ask about his age and just ignore the white hair, you will think that he is only in his 50s. Xiao Zhang stood at the door and called out, "Old leader." Mrs. Su raised her head and saw Xiao Zhang with a surprised look on her face. "Xiao Zhang, why are you here?" "There's just something." Xiao Zhang winked at the people at the door and asked them to wait outside the door. He walked into the yard and told Ning Hong about Ning Hong. The two old men looked at each other. They had a granddaughter, but the granddaughter had just given birth last night and was still in the hospital. There was no way she could come here to recognize her. The old man was silent for a while and then said loudly, "Bring people in." Several guards quickly brought the person in. Ning Hong burst into tears as soon as she saw the two old men. She was excited and wanted to step forward, but was stopped by Xiao Zhang. Xiao Zhang asked her to take off the jade bracelet and handed it to Mr. Su. "People." Mrs. Su took the jade bracelet and looked at it carefully for a while, then stretched out her hand to wipe a not so obvious scratch on the inside of the jade bracelet, and looked at the old man with a puzzled look. "I gave this jade bracelet to that child." "Jade bracelet? There was a scratch on the inside when my mother gave it to me." "Grandpa, Grandma!" Ning Hong cried, rushing over and wanting to throw herself into Mrs. Su's arms. "Who are your grandparents?" Mr. Su scolded, and Ning Hong was so frightened that she stood half a meter away from Mrs. Su. She glanced pitifully at Mrs. Su, and then glanced at Mr. Su with a look of fear. Opened his mouth to explain, but because of fear, he did not dare to speak. Bring a jade bracelet here and you want to recognize your relatives. Mr. Su looked at Ning Hong with raised eyebrows. What can a jade bracelet mean, and what can a few letters mean? Don't say that you can't come up with more favorable evidence. Even if you can take it out, you can't be a descendant of my Su family. Mr. Su glanced at Xiao Zhang. How many years have you followed Su Weiguo, and you still can't see that this person has nothing in common with your leader? Xiao Zhang felt weak at the sight of Mr. Su. He looked at Ning Hong with a scared look on his face. After Mr. Su reminded him, he paid attention to Ning Hong's appearance. She did not look like the chief at all. Old leader, I'm sorry, I was too anxious and didn't pay attention to her appearance. Mr. Su knelt down and continued to tinker with his flowers and plants. Take this person away. Don't bother us again with such nonsense in the future. Don't blame me for being rude to you. Yes, yes, yes. Xiao Zhang wiped his sweat and waved to the guards to take the person away quickly. Ning Hong was frightened by Mr. Su before, but now she came to her senses after being caught. She quickly cried out, Grandpa, Grandma, I am really your granddaughter, I am really. Asterisk. It was already noon the next day when Ning 11 woke up again. Lu Zhengxing and his wife, Lu He and his wife, and even Lu Zhenghua and his wife, and Lu Su and his wife also rushed back. Knowing that Ning 11 almost died with her child last night, everyone said a lot of caring words and words of encouragement. Ning 11 was very weak at the moment. She only smiled slightly when facing the relationship between everyone, but her eyes were searching the room as if there was nothing there. He's not in now. She thought he would be the first person she saw when she opened her eyes. Looking for Zionan again, Chen Jing asked with a smile. Without. Ning 11 smiled awkwardly, and when she opened her mouth to explain, Wang Ziyukan explained with a smile. Xiaonan took Nianer to take a bath. Ning 11 responded and quickly asked, Dad, how is Xiaobei's hand? Before Lu Zhengai could speak, Zhou Hui had already said with a smile, we'll talk about Xiaobei later. You have something to eat first. Yes, yes, eat something first. Your second aunt made chicken soup for you early in the morning and brought it over. Ning Xiaohe hurriedly filled some chicken soup and fed Ning 11 a small bowl. While she was free to drink chicken soup, Lu Zhengai talked about Lu Bei's situation. After they sent Ning 11 to the hospital last night, Zhou Jin and Shen Shuxing reported the case. After knowing what happened, Police C took Lu Kui away. After leaving, Police C came to the hospital to find Lu Zhengai and the others, and asked Lu Bei to do an injury assessment. Lu Bei's hand was just like Ning 11 said. His right hand would no longer be able to use its strength. To put it simply, it was useless. The hospital wanted to have Lu Bei hospitalized for treatment, but the whole family believed Ning 11 more and did not agree. Hospitalized. After talking about last night's situation, Lu Zhengai added, Lu Kui also recruited someone this morning. He said he was in a bad mood because his wife left with the child last night and drank some wine, so he went to block Ning 11. He said he is willing to compensate Ning 11 and the others for all their losses. He only hopes that Ning 11 can forgive him once. He really only did this kind of thing when he was drunk. Today he woke up and knew what he had done. He regretted it very much and felt very sad. Blame yourself. The police officer also wanted to see if we could reconcile, and his hands were severely damaged by Zionan, so this matter is settled. Ning 11 sneered. Lu Kui did smell of alcohol last night, but he didn't look like he had drunk too much. Besides, what kind of person is this? He deserved to be ruined, but he deserved it? How could Bei's future be worthy of someone like him? Road. Lu Zhengai added, Xiaonan has made it very clear to the police that we deserve the compensation, but this matter cannot be settled like this. Lu Kui, whether he was drunk or not, ambushed us and cut us off with a knife. What Xiaobei did was a fact, and Lu Kui committed a crime. As for Lu Kui's hand, it was done in self-defense. A person like him should be thrown into jail, Ning Xiaohe said angrily from the side, especially when she thought about how her daughter and granddaughter almost died last night. Her eyes couldn't help but turn red. Wow! A series of crying sounds sounded. Lunan walked into the ward with a white and fat baby. As he walked, he gently patted the baby. Oh, Nianer is good, Nianer is hungry. Okay, let's ask grandma to mix the milk. Ning Xiaohe hurriedly stood up and went to get the milk bottle. I'm hungry after taking a bath. Didn't I just eat for a while before going out? I've had diarrhea again, and my stomach is empty again. Lunan put his head on his head, patted the little guy gently, and comforted him softly. My dear, let's keep it down, so as not to wake up mommy. When Zhou Hui heard Lunan mention Ning 11, he realized that Ning 11 had already woken up. He hurriedly said, Oh, isn't Xiao 11 awake? What else are you feeding me with milk powder? Come on, Lao Lu, you go out first and let Xiao 11 give me some milk powder. Hey kid. A group of men voluntarily exited the room and even helped close the door thoughtfully. 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 225. Lunan raised his head and saw that Ning 11 was awake, with a smile on his face. He held the child to Ning 11, held his arms and patted the child's back gently. Good boy, don't cry. You'll be here soon, wife son, hurry up. Nian Bao is very hungry. Get out. Ning 11's face turned red immediately. Everyone was here, and she would be embarrassed if he stood here. What? Why should I? Lunan looked confused. The person in front of him was his wife and his son. Why should he go out? Xiao Nan, you go out first. We are all here. If you are here, Xiao 11 will be shy. Wang Ziyukan pulled Lunan and pushed him out. Go out first. It's normal for your wife to be shy when she first becomes a mother. After some time, she will be shy all right. Oops. Second aunt, it's good that you know this. I'll be embarrassed if you say it. After Lunan went out, Ning 11 opened her clothes and breastfed her son. The little guy was really hungry and sucked gurglingly. It was also at this time that Ning 11 had the opportunity to take a good look at her Nian Bao. The appearance was exactly the same as in the previous life. The only difference was that the Nian Bao in this life was fleshy, while the Nian Bao in the previous life was as thin as a monkey when it made noises. And he looked sickly since he was born. Ning 11 reached out and touched her son's cute head, and said in her heart, Nian Bao, thank you for being willing to be your mother's child. I'm sorry, your mother didn't take good care of you in your previous life. In this life, your mother will definitely make you happy and healthy. Kong grew up. Ning Xiaohe smiled and said, this guy is cute. Zhang Ying said with a smile, that's not true. In the past few months, Aunt Ning has been waiting for you, trying her best to make delicious food for you. Otherwise, how could these two children be chubby? 4 pounds and 3 ounces, Jinner also weighs 4 pounds. Even the doctor said that he has never seen such a fat twin. There are many children who are not as fat as these two siblings. Ning 11 also knew that Ning Xiaohe had been working really hard to keep her up with nutrition these past few months, so she raised her head and said with a smile, thank you, Mom. It's not me. Ning Xiaohe smiled and touched Ning 11's head. The hardest thing is Xionan. After I sent you to the ward this morning, I was busy taking care of you, wiping your sweat, and changing your clothes. After finishing my work, my feet went soft and I knelt on the ground. His sudden behavior made me unable to get off my clothes. I shouted several times but he didn't respond. I was so scared that I immediately wanted to call the doctor. Only then did he. In response, he cried and told me that he was just afraid of almost losing you and Jinbao. That fool. Ning 11 felt depressed and uncomfortable. He shouldn't cry. What kind of man is he who only bleeds and doesn't shed tears? That kid's temperament has become a little cold since that incident. No matter how big things happened to him after that, I never saw him cry. Even when he was injured in the imperial capital, when your aunt and I went there, he was still lying on the hospital bed unable to move. Your aunt and I burst into tears when we saw him like that, but he calmly comforted us. That thing, did Lunan encounter anything when she was a child? When Xiaonan was 12 years old, she was almost beaten to death by Yang Yufeng. That day was Xiaobei's 6th birthday. A group of people from the Yang family also came over. They all had a lively meal. After the Yang family left, Yang Yufeng discovered the 50 yuan he had hidden under the sheets was gone. At that time, their family was still living in the old house. Xiaonan and Xiaobei were playing with Xiaoxu and Xiaohe at the door. Yang Yufeng grabbed a small tree stick and rushed. "Come out, catch Xiaonan and give him a beating. By the time Xiaoxu calls me and your second uncle out, Xiaonan has been beaten all over, and her arms and legs are covered with dense blood marks." Your second uncle and I rushed over to stop Yang Yufeng and asked her why she did this. It was Xiaonan who stole 50 yuan from her. Xiaonan immediately retorted that he didn't take it, but Yang Yufeng insisted that Xiaonan must have taken the money, because Xiaobei is still young and doesn't understand anything, and only Xiaonan can take this money. That incident was quite a big deal, and it later alarmed many people in the village. Everyone who watched Xiaonan grow up knew how well behaved Xiaonan was, so naturally they didn't believe that he would take money, so they all helped. After talking, Sun Erniang, who runs the small shop, asked if your uncle's child had taken the money, because in the afternoon the child went to their small shop to buy snacks and took out a large amount of change. Dozens. These words made Yang Yufeng angry. She pushed Xiaonan away and started arguing with Sun Erniang, saying that all the children in her Yang family were good and would never do anything sneaky. Before Wang Ziyukan could finish speaking, Chen Jing became angry. Does that mean Yang Yufeng's own son is no longer a good person, and is a person who can do sneaky things? Is there something wrong with Yang Yufeng's brain, that she actually believes that her nephew is also a good person? I don't believe my son. Zhang Ying also said angrily, none of her Yang family is good. It's not uncommon for children raised like Boss Yang to steal things. On the contrary, our Xiaonan doesn't seem to be able to do that kind of thing. People. No, Wang Ziyukan sneered. There were several children from the village who went shopping that day. Sun Erniang immediately called those children over. After repeated questioning by their parents, those children said that the money that the boy said personally was Yang Yufeng's family took it. The facts are in front of her. Yang Yufeng still insists that Xiaonan took the money and has nothing to do with her nephew. After that incident, your dad took Xiaonan and Xiaobei to the town and asked me to help take pictures. Zhou Hui sighed. Xiaonan also seemed to have grown up overnight. The smile on his face was gone. No matter what happened, he has never cried about anything. He is studying in the town, and your father said he would take him back to the country during the holidays, but he refused to go back. It's strange that he is willing to go back. He will suddenly change at some point. He should have realized that his mother doesn't like him. Wang Ziyukan snorted coldly, if you like it, you won't give birth to it but refuse to care about it. The little one in her arms had fallen asleep. Ning 11 gently picked up the child and patted the child on the back. Seeing Ning 11's skillful movements, Zhang Ying couldn't help but complain, if we didn't know, we would all doubt whether you two secretly gave birth to a child outside. What's wrong? Ning 11 looked confused and handed the child to Ning Xiaohe, who asked Ning Xiaohe to put the child in the small bed next to her. Don't blame me, even my aunt said that she has never seen that father who was very skillful when he first held the child, and Xiaonan was also very skillful when feeding the child milk powder. After feeding the child, the doctor had not had time to remind him, and the child had already been taken away. Put it on the body and pat the child gently to make the child burp. Ning 11 twitched her mouth. Lunan went to learn it specifically. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 226. Jo Hui opened the door again, and only Lunan was left outside. Where are your uncle and the others? I went downstairs to smoke. Lunan walked in, glanced at the little guy sleeping soundly on the crib, and then asked, Xiao 11, are you hungry? I just ate, Ning 11 replied, and then asked, how is Jin Bao? She knew that the child must have been put into an incubator. The doctor said there's no big problem, but we need to keep an eye on it. Ning 11 raised her head and looked at Lunan. I want to see her. Okay, just as the doctor said, you have to get out of bed and walk around when you wake up, you can't lie down all the time. Lunan walked over and helped her get out of bed. It hurt a little, but it was within the tolerable range. She walked slowly, and was supported by Lunan as she walked step by step towards the observation room. There were more than a dozen children in the observation room. They were not allowed to enter and could only see through the glass. Ning 11 locked eyes with Jin Bao on the crib at a glance. The chubby little face looked almost exactly like her brother's. Yes, it's just that Jin Bao looks a little smaller and thinner. Ning 11 caressed her little princess through the glass, and gently raised the corner of her lips. Jin Bao, mom's carrying little cotton padded jacket, don't be afraid, mom will take you home soon. After standing for a while, Lunan urged, go back, you can't stand for too long. Oh, Ning 11 was a little reluctant, but she still turned around and walked back obediently. This distance is a bit far for Ning 11 now. She was thinking about Jin Bao when she came here, so she could still hold on, but now she can't walk, her stomach hurts and cold sweat breaks out on her forehead. Does it hurt? Lunan, with eyes full of panic, bent down and picked her up. My wife, please bear with me, let's go find a doctor. Ning 11 shook her head at him and said weakly, there's no need to go to the doctor. This is a normal contraction. It won't hurt in 2 days. Lunan felt a little uncomfortable, but didn't know what to say. He couldn't replace her pain. Seeing him like this, Ning 11 knew that he must be feeling uncomfortable again, so she smiled and diverted his attention. I heard that you are good at holding children. Of course Lunan is good at holding children. He was the one who held their grandson in his previous life. How could he not hold her? But he definitely couldn't tell Ning 11 this, so he just said casually, the doctor taught me. Doctor, when did I teach him? He obviously knows how to do it. He was so skilled when he held a baby this morning. If she hadn't known that Ning 11 was the first child, she would have suspected that this was definitely not the first time for him to hold a baby. Speaking of Cao's arrival, the two of them saw the doctor standing in the ward chatting with Ning Xiaohe and the others as soon as they returned to the ward. Lunan twitched his mouth, hoping that his little wife would not ask the silly question of whether the doctor taught him to hold the baby. The doctor heard that Ning 11 was awake and came over to examine Ning 11. After the examination, the doctor said a few words and left. Lunan followed and walked out. Dr. Chen, I'm sorry last night, and I'm sorry this morning. I didn't mean to target you. In that case, I didn't have much time to explain to you. The doctor waved his hand nonchalantly and asked with a smile, Ning 11 is also a doctor. She is a Chinese medicine doctor. Because Ning 11 was still very weak, they stayed for a while before going back. Lunan and Ning Xiaohe stayed to take care of Ning 11 and the child. Ning 11 has been out in a daze, either sleeping or feeding Nian Bao, and the afternoon passed in a daze. Just after dinner in the evening, Zhou Tong and his wife came with Zhou Mi, and several people chatted with her for a while. Zhou Tong and the others were ready to go back, and Wang Ziyukan also packed up the thermos bucket and was about to leave. Mom, you and your second aunt go back together, I'll just keep watch over the hospital. Ning Xiaohe was a little worried. How can that be done? If the child makes trouble alone, how can you take care of it? Xiao 11 still needs to be taken care of. Just let Xionan take care of him. If it doesn't work, he will ask a nurse for help. Come on, let's go back and come back tomorrow to replace Xionan. Wang Xiaoyan dragged Ning Xiaohe out the door with a smile. When she reached the door of the ward, she persuaded in a low voice, Xiaohe, I know you are worried about Xiao 11, but you also have to give the young couple their private space. Look, we are all here today. Xiao Nan didn't even have the chance to be alone with Xiao 11. Xiao Nan was very shy. Xiao 11 suffered a lot after giving birth to these two children. He must have a lot to say to Xiao 11. If you were here, where would he have the chance to say it? Ning 11 and Lu Nan looked at each other. How could the second aunt do this? Even if you want to persuade her, you should go out, or don't let the person involved here. After the second aunt and the others left, Lu Nan closed the door and walked over to lie down beside Ning 11. He hugged her gently and kissed her on the lips. I'm sorry, my wife, for making you suffer. I swear I won't do it again. I won't let you suffer like this. Ning 11 raised her fingertips and lightly traced them across his eyebrows, eyes, bridge of nose, and lips. She felt so sorry for this man, for him crying for her, and for having his heart broken by Yang Yufeng at a young age. Don't touch it. Lu Nan grabbed her hand and put it on his heart. Silly wife, I can't stand the slightest bit of teasing from you. What? I'm not teasing you. Ning 11's face turned red. She simply felt sorry for him and wanted to comfort him. What's that if it's not teasing? Lu Nan looked at her with an aggrieved look. Don't you feel it? Your heart is about to jump out of your chest. After his reminder, she felt that his heart was indeed beating much faster than usual. At first, she was still thinking about how to explain, but the man stopped teasing her and patted her head with a smile. Fool, I am a man and can handle anything. There is nothing to feel sorry for. But you have gone through so much trouble to give birth to a child for me. My heart almost hurts to death. He heard the conversation between Ning 11 and the others in the ward at noon. Coupled with the distressed look on his young daughter-in-law's face, he knew that his young daughter-in-law felt sorry for him. Ning 11 rested her head on his chest. Brother Nan, my mother is also your mother. Well, Mom is very good to me. Lu Nan kissed her hair. Ning Xiaohe was indeed a good mother, both to him and to Ning 11. He kept some distance from her and looked at her with a smile. She said, I am very lucky to have got an incomparable wife and the best mother-in-law in the world. Ning 11 blinked her eyes a few times, was stunned for a few seconds, and then asked with a wary look, Who are you? Your husband. Lu Nan was a little speechless. What is the wife doing? You are not, my husband will not say such things. Ning 11 held his face with both hands and squeezed his face into various shapes. You monster, please give me my husband back. Lu Nan let her knead it for a while, then grabbed her little hand, lowered his head and blocked her lips. Because her body had not fully recovered and he was worried about hurting her, he just tasted it lightly for a while and then reluctantly let go. Honey, you called me husband. Can she say that she just followed his words and didn't pay attention to the title issue? 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 227. He pecked her lightly on the lips again. Once you call me husband, you can't change it in the future. Ning 11 rolled her eyes at him. You can't shout like that in front of everyone. A certain woman was very cooperative, and a certain man agreed, simply saying, Okay, we'll call you when we're alone. As he spoke, he pecked her lips again. There is no one here right now. Call me husband and listen. Ning 11 rolled her eyes at him. Why is there no one? My son is still here. Lu Nan was helpless. No matter how old my son is, he doesn't understand anything. Hurry up and shout, don't make excuses. She was very depressed and could only call out husband in a low voice. Well? Are you sleepy, wife? Let's go to bed early. My son is hungry and has to be woken up. Ning 11 lay sideways on Lunan, glanced over his shoulder at the sleeping baby in the crib beside the bed, reached out to touch the baby, then retracted into his arms and rubbed her arms. Quietly close your eyes. I have to say that no matter in the previous life or in this life, the little guy is easier to take care of than other children. Apart from being hungry and having stinky diarrhea at night, the little guy has always been quiet, which also made the two newbie parents a lot more relaxed. Newbie, Ning 11 took care of the children by herself in her previous life. She is not a novice, and there is nothing she doesn't know how to do. However, Lunan is very good at this. During the day, Ning Xiaohe was helping Nian Bao wash his and so on. It was only now that Lunan had the opportunity to do this by himself. Ning 11 was lying on the hospital bed watching a new father holding a baby in one hand and gauze in the other hand, skillfully washing the baby's butt. She was so surprised that her eyes almost fell out of her head. Is he really a father for the first time? Is this really his first time taking care of a child? He is familiar with holding a baby. It can be said that he was taught by a doctor. He is very smart and learns everything quickly. He has become proficient in holding a baby in half a day. She believes it. What about now? I watched it countless times during the day. It was the first time I washed milk baby's butt, and I was able to do it very skillfully. Why does she not believe it? Brother Nan, do you still have a home in the imperial capital? Ah, Lunan raised his head and looked at Ning 11 with a confused look on his face. What? Do you have another child in the imperial capital? Lunan was confused by her question and couldn't react for a long time. Nian Bao in his arms felt uncomfortable being held like this, so he cried loudly. Lunan came back to his senses, lowered his head and quickly washed Nian Bao clean, wiped off the water, and put it in Ning 11's arms. Nian Bao has a stinky bowel movement. He must be hungry. Ning 11 opened her clothes to breastfeed Jin Bao. There was no one else in the room at the moment, and she was no longer so shy, nor was she avoiding him. Lunan picked up the water basin and went out, took out the water and poured it out. He also took out the pants and diapers that Nian Bao had changed and washed them. When he came out of the toilet, he saw a man standing in the corridor. Liza, why are you here at this time? Lunan glanced at his watch. It was already 11 o'clock in the evening. Liza asked in a low voice, isn't Aunt Ning in the hospital? My mother? Go back and rest. Lunan's face was full of questions. What did this kid mean when he came here in the middle of the night and asked about his mother-in-law? Lazy Eye glanced into the half-hidden room. Ning 11 had already fallen asleep in the room. He pulled Lunan to the side and whispered, the chief is here. Lunan frowned. What was his father-in-law doing here at this time? It would be okay if the mother-in-law encountered this. Lazy Eye explained in a low voice, I am worried about my sister-in-law and also want to come and see the two children. He is in the car and is afraid of meeting Aunt Ning, so he asked me to come up first. Lunan walked into the room quietly, looked at Ning 11 who had fallen asleep, and walked out of the ward again. Go and pick up the chief. When Lazy Eye brought Su Weiguo up, Lunan happened to finish smoking a cigarette in the corridor. Lazy Eye took out 2 red envelopes and handed them to Lunan. Boss, my sister-in-law is resting, so I won't go in. This is for the 2 of us, the little ones. Thank you. Lunan was not polite to Lazy Eye. He smiled and took the red envelope and led Su Weiguo into the house. Su Weiguo walked to the bed and sat down. He looked at the pale Ning 11 and felt extremely distressed. Why is your face so pale? Ask your family to prepare something for her to eat. Your grandma, Mrs. Su, said she must take good care of her during the confinement period. If you don't take care of it well, it will lead to diseases in the future. Lunan explained in a low voice, Xiao 11's appetite is not very good today. The doctor said that it is normal for her to be like this now, and she will slowly recover in a few days. Su Weiguo nodded. Has the doctor checked her? Is there anything serious about Xiao 11? Checked, nothing happened. If you don't have enough money, tell me that 11er's nutrition must keep up. She has suffered and must be well taken care of. Enough. My silly girl must be suffering. Su Weiguo stretched out his hand to touch his baby daughter distressedly but was worried about waking her up, so he could only retract his hand reluctantly and looked at Ning 11 intently for a while. Thinking of his mother's instructions, Su Weiguo took out his camera from his bag, took a few photos of Ning 11, and then turned around and took about a dozen photos of the child. After taking the photo, Su Weiguo realized that there was only one child here and hurriedly asked, "Is there another one?" In the observation room, Jinbao almost didn't survive when he was born, so he needs to be observed for 24 hours. Su Weiguo reached out and touched Nianbao. He wanted to hug him but was afraid of waking Nianbao, so he could only lean down and kiss Nianbao. "My dear, I am Grandpa. You have to listen to your mother. Don't let your mother get hurt. I'll wait for you if you are older. Grandpa will take you out to play." Because he was worried that Ning 11 would wake up, Su Weiguo didn't stay long and walked out of the ward. He also wanted to see Jinbao, so Lunan could only take him to the observation room. Jinbao happened to wake up and was crying. The nurse was mixing the milk and coaxing her, "Xiao Jin is good, Grandma will eat it soon. Don't cry, don't cry." Lunan looked at Su Weiguo and walked to the doctor's office next to him. After a while, Lunan and the doctor walked out together. The doctor opened the observation room and said, "Follow me. Only one person can enter." Lunan explained, "Chief, I have agreed with the doctor that you can go in and feed Jin'er." Su Weiguo was stunned for a few seconds before he walked into the observation room. With the help of the doctor, he clumsily picked up the child and sat on a stool nearby. He gently patted the child's back. After the nurse took the bottle, he gave it to him with the help of the nurse and the doctor. "The child is breastfeeding." The doctor came out of the observation room, and Lunan quickly said, "Dr. Chen, thank you." According to the rules, family members are not allowed to enter the observation room until the child leaves the observation room. I also saw that the child is in good condition, and you also said that the child's grandfather came from the imperial capital specifically to see the child before allowing him to enter. However, just this once, you can't always make things difficult for us. Lunan nodded hurriedly, "Understood, then, my family, please don't mention this matter. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law are angry. If my mother-in-law knows that my father-in-law has been here, she will definitely be angry." When Su Weiguo came out of the observation room, there was a smile on his face, and he was a little more satisfied with his cheap son-in-law. He took out 2 red envelopes and handed them to Lunan, and then took out 2 small boxes and handed them to Lunan. Then he looked at Lazy Eye, who handed a bag to Lunan. "I bought 2 small silver locks for my children. I also brought a stick of ginseng and donkey hide gelatin to Xiao 11. I heard that donkey hide gelatin is good for replenishing qi and blood, so it's just right for Xiao 11 to eat." "Thank you, Chief." 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 228. I heard what Lazy Eye said about last night. How is your brother's hand? You don't have to worry about him wanting to go to military school. I will find a way and I can't ruin the child's dream. Su Weiguo hated people who came through the back door the most in his life, but the child was injured because he came to protect his daughter and grandson, so he couldn't ignore it. Xiao 11 can be cured and it will not affect his entrance into the military academy. Hearing what Lunan said, Su Weiguo finally felt more at ease. Have you decided where to take the exam? The one I recommend to him is the Army Engineering College Imperial Campus. Whether he wants to apply for this school depends on himself and his grades. Sueagyo snorted coldly, it depends on the results. My children want to study at the Army Engineering College to give them face. He dare not accept it? Lunan smiled. In Sueagyo's eyes, this school was indeed nothing special. Have you decided on the names of the two children? The Dabeo is a boy named Lujinian, nicknamed Nianbeo, and the second treasure is a daughter named Lujinur, nicknamed Jinbeo. Sueagyo frowned. Jinian, Jinur, this name is not grand enough. Who gave it to you? Ded by Xiao Xiatori. Once he heard that the name was given by his daughter, Sueagyo immediately changed his mind. It doesn't matter whether the name is big or not. What's important is that it sounds nice. Lazy Eye glanced at Sueagyo out of the corner of his eye and resisted the urge to laugh. Gosh! The double standard of the chief is too obvious. Fortunately, the name was not chosen by Uncle Lu or the boss, otherwise there would be all kinds of faults. Lunan is much calmer. This is not the first time he knows that Sueagyo protects the calf, and he has long been used to it. In his previous life, after Ning 11 died, Sueagyo saw the necklace around Ning 11's neck. After repeated questioning, he found out that Ning 11 might be his daughter. He became anxious and immediately took Ning Jinner for a paternity test. After confirming that Ning 11 was his daughter, Sueagyo was furious. He not only kicked Ning Hong out in front of the military bosses, but also handed over the evidence of the dirty things she had done behind their back to the police. Red, Yang Weigyo were all imprisoned. Ning Dalong, Lu Shufang, and Ning Erlong were not spared, especially Ning Dalong and Ning Erlong. Sueagyo personally beat these two people half to death. Because Sueagyo had no chance to make up for Ning 11, he gave all his love to Ning Jinner. He wanted to pamper Ning Jinner to the sky. If he hadn't stopped him, and if Ning 11 hadn't taught him well, Ning Jinner might have let him go. Her grandfather was so spoiled that he couldn't find anything to look for. Sueagyo spent the whole night at the small hotel opposite the hospital. He came to the hospital before dawn in the morning and asked Lazy Eye to drive to the entrance of the hospital. He waited for nearly an hour before he saw Ning Xiaohe walking into the hospital carrying a lunchbox. The woman in my memory has not changed much, except that she is a little more haggard than when she was young. The heart that had been blocked for a long time started to beat wildly again the moment she saw the woman. This woman is his disaster. Without her in this life, he is destined to seal his love and will not let any woman take Mrsu's position. With her, he wants to give her everything he can give. When Ning Xiaohe walked to the ward, she happened to see Lunan bending over and looking at Ning 11. He looked at her with a smile and said, "What did you say last night?" "What did I say?" Ning 11 was a little confused. "I still have a child in the imperial capital." Ning Xiaohe's eyes widened. "What's the meaning?" Lunan was carrying her daughter outside with someone else, and she gave birth to the child with someone else? Who can bear this shit? Ning Xiaohe pushed open the door and rushed in quickly, yelling angrily, "Lunan! It's over." Ning 11 looked at Lunan with a worried look. It was over, it must be over. Lunan did not expect that Ning Xiaohe would come at this time, and immediately turned around to explain, "Mom. What do you mean? You have children outside. How can you be worthy of my 11er? Ning Xiaohe didn't give Lunan a chance to explain. She raised her hand and slapped her. Lunan didn't hide and accepted the slap forcefully. "Mom!" Ning 11 screamed, quickly stood up and grabbed Ning Xiaohe's hand. "It didn't happen at that time, I was just kidding." Ning Xiaohe glared at Ning 11, "Are you still protecting him?" "No, Mom, please calm down and listen to my explanation first." Ning 11 pulled Ning Xiaohe and looked at Ning Xiaohe pitifully. Ning Xiaohe sighed and put down the lunchbox she had brought, and sat aside waiting for her explanation. This is really a misunderstanding. I just thought that brother Nan was too skilled at taking care of children. Then I joked with him last night and asked him if he had another child outside. I went to bed after feeding the child last night. He was so didn't you just find the opportunity to settle accounts with me this morning? Ning Xiao he was so angry with her daughter. How could her daughter make such a joke and even make her beat up her son-in-law? Can such a joke be made? Just. Lunan was so skilled, so she just made a joke, but she didn't know that Ning Xiao he would hear it and be taken seriously. Xionan Ning Xiao he called Lunan awkwardly. Lunan immediately vowed, "Mom, I promise there won't be any of those messy things." Ning Xiao he was even more embarrassed. "You said you kid, why don't you know how to avoid it?" Lunan smiled nonchalantly, "You are an elder. If you want to hit me, how can I hide? Besides, you are so strong. It doesn't matter if you get hit. My wife must be hungry. How about we go wash up first and then come back, have a meal?" Ning 11 nodded quickly. This was too embarrassing and she really had to go out and take it easy. Lunan helped Ning 11 get out of bed and left the ward. "You're stupid. You can avoid it, but you still don't know how to hide." After leaving the door, Ning 11 glanced at Lunan's face, probably because his skin was wheat-colored, and there was no obvious difference on his face. There was a slap mark, but it must have hurt. She heard the slap after the slap. "Stupid, I'm going to hide. What will mom think of me?" Lunan smiled and pinched her face. "I'll give you a longer memory so you don't talk nonsense in the future." Ning 11 curled her lips and said, "It's not me who was hit, so why did it make me lose my memory?" "You won't feel bad if I beat your man." Lunan pointed at his face. "Look, this is the consequence of your nonsense. Please take it easy in the future. Don't harm your husband. He is really not afraid of his mother-in-law. He is afraid of his father-in-law. If the father-in-law thinks that he has made her unhappy, it will not be a slap in the face, but he will be beaten to death. You can't blame me. It's already been a night. Why are you asking again? If you didn't ask me, wouldn't it be nothing? It's still my fault. If I didn't ask or explain, would you think I was guilty and didn't dare to explain?" She was really just joking and not thinking too much. "Okay. You can pick up Jinbei today, but you have to wait until the doctor goes to work." After breakfast, Lunan went to the observation room at Ning 11's urging. After waiting outside the observation room for about 10 minutes, the pediatrician came over to check Jinbei after the doctor went to work. After making sure that the child was fine, the nurse asked the nurse to take the child to Lunan. Ning 11 has also completed the examination, and there is nothing serious. They can be discharged from the hospital. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 229. No one wanted to stay in the hospital for a long time. When she heard that she could be discharged, Ning Xiaohe hurriedly packed her things. After a while, Lunan came back with Jinbao in his arms, and Ning 11 couldn't wait to go over and take Jinbao over. I don't know if it's because of the heart-to-heart relationship between mother and child. As soon as the child fell into Ning 11's hands, her little eyes suddenly opened, and her big watery eyes looked at Ning 11 intently. Do you know that he is in your mother's arms? Lunan was happy and poked Jinbao's little face with his finger. Just now the nurse was telling me that the little guy hasn't opened his eyes yet, so we must pay attention to it. Jinbao tilted his head, opened his mouth and bit Lunan's hand. Little silly girl, daddy's hands are so dirty, you can't bite them. Lunan quickly retracted his hand. Hey hey hey. His little Jinner was so cute when he was a child. If those things hadn't happened in his previous life, Xiao Jin'er would never have stared at him like he was an enemy all day long. Wow! He didn't bite, and the little guy cried out. He seemed to smell the milky fragrance of his mother, and he kept rubbing it in his mother's arms. Pht! Jinbao is hungry, I don't want to bite you. Ning 11 rolled her eyes at Lu Nan, then sat down on the bedside with Xiao Bao in her arms to feed Jinbao. Ning Xiaohe smiled and said, Xiaonan, the doctor said it's ready to be discharged. Go and complete the discharge procedures. Lu Nan went through the discharge procedures. It was almost 11 o'clock when the procedures were completed. Lu Nan and Wang Ziyuan walked into the ward together. Lu Nan took a windbreaker and put it on Ning 11, and then took out a scarf and tied Ning 11's head together. The whole face was covered, and the two babies were also wrapped tightly. The two children were each held by Ning Xiaohe and Wang Ziyuan. Lu Nan helped Ning 11, who was wrapped tightly, to leave the hospital. Lu Su drove his car and waited for them at the door. He saw a few people from a distance and hurriedly opened the door. The car drove directly into the yard. After getting off the car, Lu Nan immediately helped Ning 11 into the room. Hot Ning 11 immediately took off her windbreaker as soon as she entered the door. Mothers are more afraid of heat than ordinary people after giving birth, so she was covered in sweat as she was wrapped tightly in the heat. I'll get you a towel to wipe it off. Seeing that Ning 11's face was red and her forehead was covered with sweat, Lu Nan quickly brought a towel to Ning 11 to dry her sweat. Daughter-in-law, be patient, you can't take a shower now, just I can wipe it for you. Okay, let's go lie down on the bed and cover it with the quilt. Xiao Nan, go get some water quickly. The little guy pooped again. Ning Xiaohe walked into the house holding the child. Here we come, Lu Nan responded and hurried out to bring some hot water. After cleaning the little one started crying from hunger again. Ning Xiaohe handed the child to Ning 11 and hurriedly went out to pack the things brought back from the hospital. Wang Ziyuan also smiled and said, go and change the water quickly. These two guys must have agreed upon this, and they did this too. Lu Nan was still able to go out and fetch hot water and came in. Second aunt, I'm here. It's almost noon. Auntie is making lunch by herself. Second aunt, you go and help auntie cook. Wang Ziyuan smiled and agreed, handing the child over to Lu Nan. After washing Jinbao and putting on the diaper, the little guy also started crying loudly. Jinbao is hungry too. Be good and don't cry. Let's go find mother. Lu Nan hurriedly carried the child to Ning 11. You coax first. Nian Bao is eating. She couldn't let Nian Bao eat until he was full, so she couldn't let him eat it. Jinbao is hungry, and it's useless for me to coax her. Lu Nan sat on the bed, opened Ning 11's clothes and sent Jinbao over. The little guy immediately opened his mouth as soon as he smelled the smell. You! Ning 11 glared at him angrily. At this moment, she wanted to slap the stinky man to death. How shameless was he! He shamelessly pulled down her clothes in front of the baby. If you are angry, please don't be angry, wife. I can't help it. They are brothers and sisters. It was agreed upon. When they cry, they both cry together. You can't make one cry dumb every time before feeding him. This makes sense, but she doesn't know how to refute it. Here, drink the chicken soup first. After the two little guys fell asleep, Ning Xiaohe came in with a bowl of chicken soup. Chicken soup has no salty taste except for oil. No, it tastes a little fishy when you drink it and smells it too. Seeing the chicken soup brought to her, Ning 11 frowned in disgust, but she still picked up the bowl obediently. She was not allowed to eat salty food during confinement, and she had to endure it even if she felt uncomfortable. Doesn't it taste good? Lu Nan reached out and touched her head. I'll make something delicious for you tonight. Before Ning 11 could speak, Ning Xiaohe had already said helplessly, what delicious food can I make? She can't eat anything now. The food is ready. Xiaonan, please come out to eat quickly. Zioxy will put the bowl away after finishing eating. Okay, I'll get it later. With these words, Ning Ziohe went out. I have a way. Lunan pinched her nose and smiled mysteriously without further explanation. Ning 11 didn't think much about it. Even if this man made delicious food, her mother wouldn't let her eat it. Even if her mother didn't stop her, she wouldn't eat it. For the sake of her own health, she could bear it. Lunan took out 2 boxes from the cabinet on the table, walked to the bed and sat down, opened them, and took out 2 small silver locks for the little guy to wear. When did you buy it? Ning 11 looked surprised. Why didn't she think of buying this for her baby? The chief gave me 1 ginseng and 2 boxes of donkey hide gelatin as a gift. Lunan took out the ginseng and donkey hide gelatin from the cabinet. Can you eat these now? You can't eat ginseng, but you can eat donkey hide gelatin. Okay, I'll try to see if I can get a pigeon to stew donkey hide gelatin for you. Ning 11 raised her eyebrows. He knew a little too much. He also knew how to stew pigeons with donkey hide gelatin. It's also possible that Sueagyo told him, otherwise many people didn't know this thing, so why would they think of making soup with it? The chief also gave 2 big red envelopes. Lunan took out 4 red envelopes from his pocket and handed them to Ning 11. The first 2 were opened and each contained 200 yuan. What lazy I got, this guy only gets so much salary every month, but he actually gets so much. Ning 11 smiled and said nothing. Neither she nor he would forget Lazy Eye's thoughts. He opened the 3rd and 4th red envelopes, which contained a neat stack of Grandpa Mao. Isn't this too much? Ning 11 frowned and took the red envelope and counted it carefully. 1, 2002. Although the conditions of Ning 11's family are better now, the lives of other people are still tight. Some people may never see so much money at once in their lives. Even if the chief's salary is good, he will not be able to live alone. The shot is 2002. If the chief is willing to give it, we'll take it. If he has a happy family in the future, we'll just make up for it. Lunan said this. Ning 11 didn't know what to say. She put the money away and said with a smile, then you give it to me. Keep it in the account, you will have to pay it back later. Lunan smiled and dumped the blame. My family's financial power is in your hands, there's no point in me remembering it. 80s, after marrying a disabled man, I am really fragrant. Author, Nostalgic Head. Chapter 230. It sounds like you are pitiful. Ning 11 rolled her eyes at Lunan. In fact, she knew that he gave his salary card to his mother. This man didn't want a cent of his salary and didn't know how he lived, so he just talked about eating. There is no charge to eat in the cafeteria. What about smoking? There are also bus tickets home and buying toiletries and so on. Are these all free? These are the things she wanted to ask, and she also thought about getting money for him, and even wanted to ask her mother to return his salary card to him. But even though she was worried, she didn't do anything like that. She had lived 2 lives and had never eaten pork but had seen pigs run away. She didn't know that men are creatures with strong self-esteem. Marrying a woman who is more profitable than himself will make a man uncomfortable. In turn, raising a man will only make him more disgusted. No matter how much love he had in the past, this love will turn into disgust, and even love. Hatred. Ning 11 used to only think about changing their current lives, making their lives better, so that their children would not have to endure hardships with them in the future, but she forgot that her man was a man with a lot of honors, but his salary did not count. Tall soldier. By the time she discovered this, it was already too late. It was impossible for her to make money without making money, and it was impossible for everyone to suffer hardships with her, so she could only carefully maintain the relationship between her and Lunan. If he wants to raise her, then let him raise her. If he thinks the child is his responsibility, then let him raise the child. As for other things at home, she is still responsible for it. In the afternoon, Ning 11 took a nap and was woken up by the crying of her child. The little ones were hungry again. Ning 11 sat up and picked up Jinbao and was about to feed her. "Little guy, are you hungry again?" Lunan pushed the door in from the outside wearing an apron. "What do you want to do?" Ning 11 looked at Lunan warily. Could this man want to be like Noon again? "What do you think I'm doing?" Lunan came over and picked up Nianbao. Seeing that she hadn't untied her clothes yet, Jinbao was crying and cuddling in her arms. He was not polite at all and started to help her untie her clothes. "Lunan, do you still want to be embarrassed?" Ning 11 glared at him. She was so angry that she even called him by his first name. He ignored her and continued what he was doing until both children started to have a full meal, then he raised his head and kissed her pouted mouth with a smile. "Daughter-in-law, do you know why the twins wore the same clothes when they were young?" She was still a little angry and snorted, "I don't know." "That's because if they don't wear the same clothes, they will compare whose clothes are better. If one of them thinks that the other's clothes are better, they will be angry. If they are angry, they may lose their temper. So, sir, whenever I buy something for the twins, I always buy the same thing. Look, if you let one child eat first every time, and one child cries when she is hungry, if she is more thoughtful, will she feel that her mother is partial, will she be angry, and will she possibly put herself at risk? Give. Don't talk nonsense." Ning 11 held the child with both hands and couldn't free her hands. She was so anxious that she blocked his mouth with her mouth. The smile on Lunan's face became even brighter. After a while, he stepped back a little and licked his lips with a smile. "Daughter-in-law, this is the first time you take the initiative to kiss me." "I didn't kiss you. I just wanted to block your mouth and not allow you to talk nonsense." "Well, I know you are making excuses for yourself, don't worry, I won't laugh at you. Get out." "Okay, I'll get out as soon as the child is full." This man had no temper at all. He just coaxed her to finish feeding the baby, put the baby down, covered her with a quilt, and walked out in a hurry. Seeing that he was about to run away, Ning 11 immediately felt aggrieved. "Can't you just talk to me for a while? Didn't you promise to review with me before? It was you who told me to get out." "I got out of here and you were wrong." Lunan could only walk back, lowered his head and kissed her again. "Good boy, don't be angry, I'm making soup for you. By the way, Mom asked me to ask if you are hungry and if you want to boil 2 poached eggs." Knowing that he was busy making food for her, her mood immediately improved and her stomach immediately became hungry. "You cook." "Okay, I'll cook for you. Don't lose your temper. I'm a doctor myself. I should know how terrible postpartum depression is. If I don't do something well, tell me and I will definitely change it." He himself put the words to his mouth, and she immediately seized the opportunity and muttered, "You are just doing something wrong. You treat me as a cow. When your son or daughter cries, you immediately ask me to breastfeed them. I don't think of you as a cow, I just feel sorry for the child and keep crying." Lunan sat down next to her. He looked down at her and said with a serious face, "Daughter-in-law, my love for my 2 children is based on the fact that you gave birth to them for me. I can't bear to see them cry because you gave birth to them with all your life, but no matter, no one is as important as you." Lunan helped her put her hair behind her ears and said in a consultative tone, "You have to mind feeding the 2 children together, otherwise let's buy some milk powder. If the child cries, feed one with milk powder and the other with breast milk. Change it every time. If you I don't want to breastfeed my child, but both children need formula. Anyway, everything depends on you. I just hope you can be happy. I'm hungry. Go and cook immediately." Lunan quickly stood up and walked out. Looking at his leaving figure, Ning 11 frowned. Postpartum depression exists no matter what era, especially in rural areas. It is okay to give birth to a son, but if you give birth to a daughter, you will not get good care, and you will have to be scolded and humiliated by your mother-in-law and husband all day long. If you are not depressed, that's weird. But in this backward era, in this backward town, there is no psychiatrist, let alone anyone who knows what depression is. Therefore, some women who have drastic changes in temperament after giving birth will not be diagnosed. Family values it. In some cases that are not serious, the ability to self-regulate will not be obvious. At most, the mind is heavy and you will have random thoughts from time to time. In serious cases, you will one day be driven crazy by yourself and your family. In her previous life, Ning 11 suffered from severe depression. She had thoughts of suicide countless times. Each time, her thoughts of suicide were interrupted either by the cries of her children or by their playfulness. At that time, she didn't know what depression was, let alone that she had depression. She didn't know about it until she met a very powerful psychiatrist later. Ning 11 didn't know if her psychological problems would accompany her back to this body after resurrecting her life. Even if it did, she didn't have to worry too much, because the 2 children were her medicine, and they were there to keep her alive. Power. When Lunan mentioned postpartum depression, what she cared about was not her own psychological problems. What she cared about was how did he know about postpartum depression. Many images flashed through Ning 11's mind, including Lunan's various changes from her rebirth to now.